Crying out the names of her family in the Libyan city of Derna, Sabrine Bill claws with her bare hands at flattened masonry. A week after the flood that swept the centre of the city into the sea, she's searching in vain to somehow reach her loved ones' bodies from under the rubble of her brother's house.
Oh God, even one body, my God. Just let me find even one body. God, have mercy on us. Who can we hold accountable? Who is responsible? To whom can we say, you are responsible for this? Who is responsible? What is the fault of the people and souls who died? Why would a whole family die? A whole family was finished.
1 week on, families are still coping with the unbearable losses of their dead. Sitting by his damaged house and covered in mud, 69-year-old Derna resident Hassan Kassar could not hold back his tears after losing 4 of his children to the floods. People are also haunted by the unknown fates of the missing. The centre of Derna is a wasteland of muddy mounds where buildings once stood. Other buildings somehow still stand precariously above bottom floors that were mostly washed away. Dams above the city burst in a storm a week ago, sending a huge torrent down a seasonal riverbed that runs through the centre of the city of 120,000 people. Thousands are dead and thousands more missing, but authorities say they haven't given up hope of finding survivors. Attentions are also turning to sanitation and safety. Workers were sanitising the streets on Monday as part of a campaign organised by the Libyan government to avoid the spread of diseases. The biggest threat to survivors may now come from contaminated water supplies. The head of one of the city's hospitals said there were fears waterborne diseases would spread, putting vulnerable people, especially women and children, at risk, but that no cholera cases have been recorded so far.
It's as if war has visited this part of Libya once again. The assailant, an unstoppable wall of water, in places several stories high. Disaster, 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 says this man, as he calls out for his missing sister and nephews. 11 members of his family are gone forever. Bystanders offer what little comfort they can.
The whole districts of my aunties and cousins are gone. It's a genocide.
This inland tsunami hit in the depths of night. No warning, no time to get to higher ground. Before and after. A father as his son is found in the mud. No one touch him, he implores. Please, just let me bury him myself. With thousands missing, presumed dead, for so many Libyans, it is an awful, haunting waiting game.
My aunt was stuck there for 48 hours. We couldn't reach her, we couldn't call her. And we lived horrible moments right here. All our relatives, it's like 30% of our relatives there in Derna. So we spent the 3 days trying to reach my aunt and all her family. And finally, we heard that nothing happened to them, thank God.
Survivors just can't fathom why them. And did warnings about the dam go unheeded?
The dam was full before the disaster. They didn't empty it, so it burst. The torrent was 12 meters in some places, as tall as a building.
What's increasingly apparent, these raging floodwaters are a catastrophic outcome of climate breakdown, putting further stress on fragile geopolitics and poor infrastructure maintenance. One of the hottest summers on record, and Saturday afternoon, after swamping Greece with record rainfall, Storm Daniel absorbs huge amounts more moisture as it barrels across a superheated Med. Sunday morning, it arrives at the Libyan coast. Sunday evening, it's well inland. Some point very early Monday morning, the first dam collapsed. It unleashed a tsunami down the Wadi Derna that swept down from the hills towards the city itself. 2:30 a.m. in town. Explosions are heard, possibly the second dam. Within minutes, a quarter of the town was submerged by the flood, taking everything in its path. And in the tangled, mangled detritus of what was left behind, make no mistake, this isn't a rescue mission. It is recovery. Down at what's now the seafront, Turkish emergency teams feel their way for submerged bodies. Upcountry, for this flood travelled for miles. The Libyan Red Crescent pick their way along the river.
These are the victims of the storm. May God protect us all. We are still looking for the victims.
This search won't be over anytime soon, and a grim outcome of the thousands that were killed here in but a matter of moments, the indignity but necessity of mass graves. The city's only hospital flooded, communications still down, bridges ruined, the only sure way in for help, helicopter. And latest estimates, Derna's human loss, over 5,000 dead, 10,000 still missing, at least 20,000 displaced. But no one knows for sure just yet.
Well, earlier I spoke to Inez Mazzani, a translator who lives in the city of Tobruk, a couple of hours' drive from Derna, where her family live. I began by asking what she knows about the situation there.
Actually, the situation is really painful and miserable now. Today, more than 1,000 and I guess 200 dead bodies were buried anonymously. We don't know who they are. Their families know nothing about them. So the rescue teams are facing so much troubles in rescuing or not rescuing, to say it correctly, in taking out the bodies.
It sounds like an absolutely horrendous situation. And what have you personally been able to find out about your family living in Derna?
Most of them are lost. Most of them we don't know where they are till now. Actually, the nature of the Libyan families and the lifestyle of the Libyan families is very intimate. Most of the families live together in the same building. So each of the families lost more than 6 or 7 members from the same families.
So you fear the worst for your family? You haven't been able to establish for certain, but you fear the worst?
Unfortunately, till now, we know nothing about them. We only care now with finding them and just bury them to feel safe for them. We don't even hope to find them alive. We only care about finding their dead bodies, just to feel like putting them in a good place, not thinking about them in the middle of the sea or like swept away on other districts next to Derna. So that's what we are praying for now.
What effect is all this uncertainty about what's happened to your family? What effect is that having on you?
We lost like we're talking about losing more than 20,000 people. So the number is really huge. You can't even cry for one member. If you want to cry about one, you will think about his brother or his sister or his father. So the pain is really huge.
And the people that you have managed to reach on the phone or by email, what are they telling you about what's going on in Derna?
Most of them had a very, very bad 2 days. The people who are alive now stayed on rooftops on the dark, and they were hearing people crying. Children, kids were swept away by the floodings.
And are you hoping to travel there? Is it possible to get by road from Tobruk, where you are, to Derna, to try and find out more about what's happened to your family?
Unfortunately, it is not possible. The roads are very crowded. Supplies and medical aids are coming from all the other cities, so we can't even travel right now.
Clearly, this was a ferocious storm, but there are also questions being asked about the maintenance of the 2 dams that burst. Who are people blaming for what's happened to you?
Yes, there is a huge anger, especially on social media. Everyone is very angry and they are pointing their fingers towards like the authority and saying we could have helped a lot of people or make the results less disastrous than it is now. Yes, all the Libyans are very angry.
And just finally, aid is now starting to get through. What help do you need? What do people in Derna need now?
We need professional rescue teams so they can help in collecting dead bodies. Because, as I told you, a lot of people are still under the rubble.
Ines Mazzoni, I hope you get some news soon. Thank you very much for talking to us.
You're more than welcome. Thank you so much.
Any chance that anyone survived here, and the rescue workers run. There's a call for silence. A cry for help from below ground has apparently been heard. And the people of Derna are desperate for some good news. A young volunteer tells the fire crews he's heard screaming twice, and he pinpoints the area it came from. But there's no heavy lifting equipment, so their efforts are by hand. A family of 3 girls lived here, but the home's been smashed to bits and the lower floors encased in mud and rubble. The volunteer who raised the alarm tells us he's certain he heard a scream. I'm sure, he says, 100%. But the city's been overwhelmed at the scale of the disaster and struggled to help every family with missing relatives. There was very little specialised equipment and few skilled rescuers on the ground in the crucial first few days. A number of international teams are now in place. This one is Russian and experienced in these challenging disaster zones. But more than a week on, the chances of finding anyone alive now are radically diminished. And this team knows it's almost certainly looking to retrieve bodies, which at least might give the relatives the chance of a funeral. It is utterly grim work, difficult and dangerous, with most of the water polluted and hazards hidden everywhere. Back across the city centre at the same buried home we were at earlier, there are still claims of noises. Now a much larger crowd has gathered.
The chances of someone surviving at this stage are very slim, but they are fired up with energy and enthusiasm to try and find this person. If he or she exists, they want to bring that person out alive.
Remarkably, a distant family friend says a call's been made from a little girl around 10 years old who's trapped with her sister under the rubble. That's enough to add yet more energy to this search.
Some people tell me somebody before 13 hours call him. It's under the floor, but the telephone charge is closed.
Gone?
Yeah, and give me the number of...
the house?
Yeah, his house. And now, when we search, I think it's in this area.
A call for quiet again. As the band of volunteer rescuers and soldiers grows, so does the excitement. They listen again for further noises and shout down the cavities they've uncovered. Bang the wall, he's urging. Then there's elation and quick celebrations. They're convinced they've heard a response, but the search will now shift slightly to a different area. But this is back-breaking and too slow, so they'll do what they can whilst they wait for the arrival of one of the few diggers. In a different part of the city, Libyan forensic investigators are also trying to find the many missing. They're using one of 3 devices they have, which can detect a corpse up to 40 meters below ground. There are still around 10,000 people unaccounted for. There are so many families waiting for answers. And so many Libyans desperate to help. This team is from an oil company, using their ultrasound equipment to try to detect noise or movement. But many may never find their lost loved ones. With every day that passes, it's getting harder and harder. A digger has finally arrived at the search for the little girl below ground where we were before. But daylight's quickly disappearing, and an already difficult job has become even more challenging with no electricity. The huge slabs of concrete are much more easily shifted now, but the only light the searchers have is from their mobile phones, a few torches and our camera. The digging goes on for hours more, but with little to show for it. No one's hearing any more sounds below ground now. Hope alone has fueled this search. Hope and faith and a collective desire to help. The rescue team feel like they've failed, but with so much stacked against them from the off. In truth, they, the little girl, and all the people of this city stood little chance. Alex Crawford, Sky News in Derna.